Large ships and the containers that it carries are responsible for much of global trade, but one does not hear much about it since it operates like a well-oiled machine. This year, however, was different. It was different in the sense a giant ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, and the world took notice. People noticed that shipping and containers both are in a state of flux. To figure out what's going on, we have with us today Vikash Agarwal, Managing Director, Maersk South Asia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So the first question again, obviously, will be, what is the level of supply chain disruptions at the moment? Uh, After, the Suez Canal blockade, you have congestion in Chinese ports now. There seems to be significant headwind. How long do you think this will last?
Yeah, Brian, the supply chain disruption really started from the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic more than a year ago. And we still see those disruptions even today. First, it was because of the severe lockdown around the globe. The lockdown restriction put a halt on a lot of manufacturing activities. Even as the lockdown restrictions started to ease off, physical distancing norms led to drop in productivity. The other challenge has been around the staggered way the pandemic has moved around the world now, with various waves impacting different geographies in different times. This caused a lot of fluctuation in demand and supply. While the impact of the pandemic has had far-reaching impact on the industry, the Suez Canal incident was indeed a short-lived actually. And the cargo movement for booking over a period of, it actually restricted the movement of cargo or booking for not more than 2 to 4 weeks. The contingency plan and the executions were solid at the time of this incident, thus reducing the impact on the customer's cargo. We even routed some of our vessels around the coast of Africa to ensure that the customer's cargo were not stuck for far too long in transit while the traffic in Suez Canal came back to normal. The COVID-19 flare-up in southern China is curbing activities at some of the country's biggest port in China now, triggering further disruptions to global supply chains already heavily affected by a series of strains over the last months, including shortage of containers, the vessels, the port congestion, the problem with crew members unable to disembark at port. And the current situation in southern China has led to a significant reduction of productivity as well, causing delays and bottlenecks both across China and a ripple effect across almost all the ports across the globe. In fact, at AP Moller Maersk, main task right now is working with our customers to minimize this impact to the supply chains to the extent possible. We are now closely monitoring the situation, giving customers as much visibility as possible, looking together for possible alternatives as well. While we do have a lot of headwinds from the continued impact from this pandemic, it is still difficult to predict how long this is going to continue for.
So, you know, you touched on the part of COVID-19. Ever since COVID-19, we've seen a significant volume push. How much of this do you think is permanent and how much of it is temporary?
See, as the Western markets have started to open up, we have noticed there has been a huge spike in demands. The consumer sentiment is positive in markets as North America and the Western or the Europe, where there is a availability of disposable income, which is fueled by the stimulus. It must be also noticed that the people are not able to spend on experience, spend like traveling. And that is making them spend more on consumer durables. So there is a demand which is coming through because of the shift in the pattern of consumption as well. This is temporary phase though. We expect that sooner or later the demand will normalize and the volumes will start coming back to the normal levels.
Right. So, India, like most of the other parts of the world, was hit by this severe container shortage. What is the status now?
Yeah, before we really start talking about the status on the shortage of containers today, it is important for us to really understand what has really caused it in the first place. And if you see, as the market around the globe started opening up, the consumer demand went up. The rising demand of goods in the global market was an opportunity for the Indian exporters, especially when the consumer demand within the country stayed comparatively low. This also meant that the import into Indian subcontinent was subdued for quite a while. With imports much lower than export, there was an imbalance in trade that became the main reason for the shortage of containers. Traditionally, the containers coming in with import cargo served the export demand, but now that has become a challenge. The other reason was also a slower turnaround time for the import containers. The productivity across the supply chain was low due to limited manpower. We all know how much of impact we saw on the manpower. Longer time was taken for the container to reach its destination, offload the cargo, and go to the origin for export cargo handling. While the productivity and the speed of containers movement is improving, the imbalance between export and import is still very high. Therefore, we continue to see these container shortages in markets even today. And until that imbalance corrects, I don't think we will see a significant improvement in the position.
Right. Can you hazard a guess how long this will continue?
This has to, I mean, we have to wait till we start to see some amount of sanity coming in, because as I said, in India, most of our exports were driven by the amount of containers which were coming into as an import. So until we start to see this balance coming back, we will not be able to see any amount of sanity coming in there. So we'll have to wait for that. Of course, as an industry, we are repositioning a lot of empties now. So we will definitely have to see that import coming back so that it can match the export cargo. And then we will start to see some amount of balancing out where we will see this shortages coming out of the situation.
Right. So shipping rates are also, shipping container rates especially is on fire. In May, moving a container from Europe to Asia shot up to around $10,000. What's behind these skyrocketing prices? I remember in 2016, if you have to, ship cargo from, say, Shanghai to Rotterdam, it was as low as $10.
Of course, I mean, the freight rate is a function of demand and supply. With the demand of containers being so high for the movement of cargo from Asian to the Western markets today, and supply being so constrained or limited, the freight rates have really gone up. Further, there is a need to even move empty containers from one part of the world to another to meet the expectation of the exporters. This is also adding to the overall cost of logistics. While this is true, what is important to note is that this variation of freight rates is for the short-term contracts and it's not for the long-term. When it comes to the long-term contracts that we have with our long-standing loyal customers, the rate agreed upon in contracts are respected and not changed despite the difficult market situation what we see today. So the impact what you see on the rates are mostly on the short-term cycle.
Right. Okay. So that must be some relief. But
yeah, it is.
India's export is also doing well in the last 4 months. What are the trends you are noticing?
Of course, I mean, India is, if you see, India is an important manufacturer of commodities like garments and apparels. The retail and lifestyle sector is one that has seen the highest demand since the Western market opened up. And this has given a major boost to the Indian exporters. So that is one sector which has really picked up very, very strongly. The second sector, what we have also started to see is the exports of agriculture produce, which has gone up significantly. Naturally, this is one sector that despite the most difficult conditions, will hardly see a slowdown, and it is evident in the way the demand has gone up. And the final sector which we have seen is a strong uptake on the chemical sector in recent times that has driven quite some exports out of India as well. So these are three major sectors what we see where the demands are very, very strong, and we are seeing a very strong demands coming in from the Western and the US markets.
So are you doing anything to support the Indian export community?
Yeah, we have undertaken a lot of measures to support Indian exporters. In fact, when the pandemic hit the world, we set 3 priorities for ourselves. And one of them was to support our customers and help them with the supply chains. The other 2 was, of course, supporting and protecting our employees and helping the society to fight the virus. In the beginning, we moved all our office-based operations to home, but did not compromise on customer experiences. Our customer-facing teams were always available despite the tough conditions. We rolled out a number of digital products to make sure that our customers had access to every solution they needed from the convenience of their homes or offices. They did not have to travel to our office for anything. In fact, our customers could get a quote for a shipment, book it, get an instant confirmation for the booking, track the cargo, complete the documentation and payments all digitally. We even released a lot of other digital blockchain platforms specifically on the electronic BL as well. In India, we were the first ones to waive off the detention charges, even before the government mandated the industry to do so in support of traders. When exporters started feeling the heat of container shortages, we started bringing in empty containers into India to support their demands. In the case of a particular exporter, we chartered a full ship for more than 2,600 empty containers to support the customer's export demand. Even within India, we moved a lot of empty containers from one part of the country to another, from import heavy pockets to export heavy pockets. There was a time when trucking was also failing because of a lot of drivers' problems. Even at that time, we stepped in and supported our customers with alternatives of moving cargo over rail. In one particular case, our customers along the eastern coast of India was not finding the right connections to move cargo to the Middle East. We moved the cargo for the customers on rail from the eastern coast to the western coast, and then connected it to the right vessel for delivery on time. There are many such examples that I could speak of when it comes to the measures that we have undertaken for our customers. In the recent second wave as well of the pandemic, when the oxygen supply to medical systems was in trouble, we air freighted oxygen concentrators into the country, offered ocean freight for oxygen tanks and of the cryogenic tanks and concentrators at a nominal charge of $1 on our ships. So there has been multitude of things which we have undertaken. And specifically, we have been very, very agile in making sure that we are supporting the exporters community as much as we can.
So, ever since I think these Suez episodes started, there has been one view that while chasing economies of scale, ships became too large and are now actually causing a problem, like clogging the port. When suddenly a giant ship with 30,000 or 3,000 containers, turned up. Uh, what are your views?
Oh, of course, the vessels did get big to achieve economy of scales. I mean, we all know this, but at Maersk, at least, we have put a stop to it. We are not ordering any more large vessels. Our focus is now to deliver more value to our customers through more integrated solutions. We want to give them an end-to-end experience of logistics and not focus only on the shipping leg of transportation. It is true that when ships are getting bigger, the ports and the other infrastructure to serve and support them also needs to upgrade. So it is not only an investment in making a ship larger, but also in upgrading existing infrastructure. The whole ecosystem has to come together. And this is where we see a challenge right now.
I personally like the move, but your global CEO has talked about a carbon tax on shipping fuel, $150. Just wondering, will that not be counterintuitive and possibly push up the cost of products?
Of course, I mean, we have a commitment towards sustainability and carbon neutral shipping. And to be honest, it is not only us, but also our customers who expect this from us. Almost 3 out of 4 of our top clients seriously consider sustainability in the supply chain today. And 90 of most top 200 customers have said or are in the process of setting science-based or zero carbon targets right now. These expectations, coupled with Maersk's ambition to lead the industry towards a more sustainable future, have made sustainability and particularly decarbonization not only a value-based responsibility, but a commercial and strategic imperative for the company. In fact, decarbonizing logistics is where we can and must move the needle the most for sustainable development. As an industry leader and the resources available to us, we have an obligation to do all we can to get to a carbon neutral fleet as fast as possible. Until then, a carbon tax on ship fuels have been proposed to bridge the gap between the fossil fuel consumed by the vessels today and greener alternatives that are currently more expensive. The fossil fuel cannot continue to being cheaper than the green fuels. It is vital to consider all greenhouse emissions, not just CO2, on a full life cycle analysis. Otherwise, we will not be able to decarbonize shipping by 2050. So this is a mean to accelerate the journey on a sustainability.
My last question to you would be, what is the outlook for the remainder of 2021? I know about 6 months left. How does the international market look like? Wear the hat of an Indian exporter also. Tell me, how does it look like?
Absolutely. I mean, if you see globally, we are now expecting to see a growth of 5 to 7% in volume in 2021, as against our previous estimate of 3 to 5%. This demand is primarily due to the export volumes driven from China to the US, with fiscal package in the US, economy recovery on track, and the vaccination drive is all helping to improve the situation and pushing up the demand for the commodities today. But the dynamics and economic activity, the trade and demand pattern will, for the remaining part of 2021, also be highly dependent on the further development of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the same thing applies to India too. The export market continues to be on a strong path of growth, while the imports are still slow. The consumer sentiments will slowly come back to normal as the vaccination drive intensifies. We will start to see the import coming back to some level of normalcy. And this is how we will see a much more balanced growth growth beyond 2021. So we still see, as I said, 5 to 7% of growth in balance of 2021.
Wonderful. Great. I think shipping has never been more exciting than what it is today. And I think the dynamics, the word that you use, I think keeps changing and makes it very interesting. Thank you for speaking to us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Pran. Thank you very much.